that it's not all about the Benjamins, but it's also about working hard, believing in who you are, and by following your heart, you truly can become a woman of impact. The queen of the empire, the empress herself, Dia Sims. I'm Lisa Bilyeu, and I went from housewife to co-founding the billion-dollar company Quest Nutrition, and now president of Impact Theory. Our mission with this show is to empower you and all women to recognize you really can become the hero of your own life. Welcome to Women of Impact.
Wow, I need that for my new alarm clock every morning. It's gonna be waking up to that every day.
Your intro was so easy to write. I had to miss and cut out so much of your life story because you've just achieved such incredible things.
Thank you.
But that hasn't been given to you. And that's really where I want to start. So you're in the Department of Defense.
Yes.
You're dealing with a $120 million contract.
Yes.
That's crazy in itself.
A little bit scary.
At the age of like 21.
21, yes.
And people still mistake you for the coffee person.
Yeah, all the time.
So how do you handle that in those moments so that you don't take a dent to your ego or feel like it's a personal effect and then it affect your outcome?
So, you know, the thing that's interesting is I'm dealing with people who really just didn't know a lot of young Black women. Mm-hmm. All they knew was whatever they saw on television. So I can fairly and objectively say, like, especially at that point in the, whenever it was, in the late 90s, if that's all you knew was something you passed by flipping through the channel, you don't have any real life experience. Mm-hmm. So I felt like it was somewhat incumbent upon me to ensure they understood in real life, right, the level of excellence that not myself, but that other women bring to the table. Mm-hmm. So I think that the key in not taking it personal was understanding that this is about people who just don't have enough information. Of course, they may have certain like inclinations, but I'm happy to be the one to chip away at that every step, every bit of excellence, every negotiation at a time.
How do you then how do you respond to that? Because for me, I would think that it would sting me a little every time it happened. And I would worry that that sting would present itself in my tone of voice, the way that I act. How do you handle those situations?
It may seem counterintuitive, but I'm incredibly grateful, right? So I start everything every morning off from a place of gratitude. So I think that helps to minimize you taking things so personally, right? So I'm very much like, oh, I'm awake? Oh, both of my legs work? Anything else is like added value, super gravy, right? So if somebody doesn't understand my role in the room, I will clearly, concisely, and elegantly correct them. But I'm not necessarily personally offended, right? Whatever issues they have, that's a disservice to them. They don't understand the value that I bring, that's money that they're losing, right? So that is the way that I would look at it, even at that point. And frankly, even as a young person, as I started to learn more and more, the thing that I have learned is you can't deny like excellence. Like I often say, like excellence is a transferable skill. You may not understand the widgets or the specific paradigm, but if you are just badass and get shit done, you can do that almost anywhere, in an oil refinery, the Department of Defense, at a television show. If you bring that dedication and discipline to excellence, I want you on my team every time. So I didn't know everything about the defense industry at 21 years old, so I had to spend my weekends studying the very extensive federal acquisition regulations. It's as sexy as it sounds.
Yeah.
You know?
It does sound actually very sexy, and I have no idea what that means.
So the key, and you could literally, to this day, this is not something that's gone away in the last 20 years, to this day, I can see the moment when I come in a room to typically 2 and 3 minutes in, you see this recognition, this change shift in your eyes of like, oh, wow, I'm starting to understand the value that she brings. I did not expect that. Just last month, after I was meeting with someone, the gentleman literally said to me, how did you get like this? And I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have asked a man that, right? You know what I mean?
That's true, yeah.
He literally said, like, how did you get like this? Like, it was so jarring to him. But I don't take that personally. I take that as like, good, this one dent, right? Hopefully when I walk out of this room, there's one dent that makes it easier for the next woman who walks in this room.
That's amazing. So do you actually find it empowering to be underestimated?
I find it a little bit, you can turn it on its head. Like, you can use it as a weapon. Don't get me wrong. I don't want it to stick around for the long term. I don't want my 6-year-old daughter to encounter it. And I hope things get better. But while we're dealing with it, and it's inevitable as a woman that you are dealing with it, when you come in a room, right, and I'm still very often, just like when I was 21 years old, and I'm 43 today, very often the only woman, I'm still the youngest, oddly, and the only reason that I'm not the only minority is because Puff will be in the room as well sometimes. But the thing about that is you get a little bit of a disproportionate share of attention of like, trying to figure out what you're doing there. It's like, what are you going to do at that moment? When you get that attention, turn it around, take control of the room, move your mission and your agenda forward. And when you take the being underestimated and kind of turn it on its head, I think it can be useful.
That's so cool. I love that. Use it as a superpower.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what about when you're in a situation, because you went into Puff's company, like it was all new to you. You'd never been a personal assistant before, an executive assistant.
Right.
So how do you walk into those rooms when you actually don't know much?
Well, I think now, so for me, I started in 2005. I remember because it was a week after I turned 30. And I say this all the time. My mother used to say, what does not knowing have to do with finding out? So even as a kid, like I would ask like basic things and they'd be like, yep, we bought the encyclopedia. Let us know what you find out. We look forward to learning about it as well, right? So I think I was always brought up in this kind of like research mentality. Information's available. When I was growing up, and even up until the early 2000s, Google was out. But you still were like, let me call my great aunt who has good information, or my homegirl who works at this. You had to actually make 43 calls or go around and ask people and do your own. Now I feel like people are such an advantage because literally all information is at your disposal, at your fingertips. So I think there's no excuses at this point. You can literally find anything out. You need to pressure test it and make sure that it's accurate and it's correct. But for me, starting off, when I didn't know anything about being an executive assistant, I learned it all on the job.
Yeah, I love it. I actually have a quote of yours, and this really sums up how I saw you in every interview that I've ever watched. Like, you just embody this. You put every person or every experience is an opportunity to learn or to teach. And it's like, you're the student and you're the teacher. And I love that. Like, what does learning mean to you, and how have you used it to get to where you are today?
So in general, I have this whole theory that we can have another meeting about, that like learning has a bad reputation. Like that you have to go to learning, or learning is encapsulated in a school.
Or if you're learning, it means that you're not good enough.
Right. And conversely, right, like if you're teaching, you don't need to learn.
Right.
The reality is every single person has something to learn, and every single person has something to teach. And I think you have to approach life like that. Like, what can you learn? And we talked about this earlier. What can you learn in your Uber? What can you learn in your bus ride today? What can you learn from your intern? Like, everybody does. And you have to approach life like that, because that is the way that you can improve, like second by second. By gathering information, you can parcel out what makes sense and what doesn't, but don't just go to the expected sources, because there is guidance, there's leadership, there's inspiration literally everywhere.